Let's talk about the business of the day as it relates to theater with your hosts, Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. This is The Business of Theater, a working title.
I'll just turn it off if I need it. It's hot, It's warm today.
Mitch, I know we're trying to figure out how to replace this a working title, but we are not naming the show The Business of Theater, a Fat Ham. We're just not going to do it. We can't do that. Unfortunately, there is no trademark.
There is no trademark or copyright on a title. We could call it Disney Plus if we wanted to.
It would not make any sense.
Or Naked on Stage. How about that? That's a subtitle.
I know.
For you.
Those are the rejections, the rejected titles.
Yeah.
But I had to open the episode by the way, this is The Business of Theater, a working title. I'm Darnell Radford.
Mitch Weiss. And that's not funny.
And I had to give a shout out to my Philadelphia colleague James Iams, who is the Pulitzer Prize winner for drama for his play Fat Ham, which was presented virtually at Wilma Theater this season and is currently in previews at the Public Theater as we speak.
Yeah,
now.
Congratulations, James.
Everyone in Philadelphia who is tied to theater has been claiming James as their best friend this whole week.
Yeah.
And it's just been an exciting time to be in Philadelphia.
Well, one of the things that is going into this upcoming month's update for the book, The Business of Broadway,
mm-hmm.
is the list of all the award shows and what they mean. Because the Pulitzer is very different than a Tony. The Pulitzer is literary. They do not see a production. Mm-hmm. They read a script. And that's one of the things that makes it very different than all the other awards. So congratulations to him, though. That's not a small feat when you consider how few people have ever won a Pulitzer and how great some of those shows are that have won. Anyway.
And it's such a surprise because, we go see shows, especially in the regional kind of circuit. We go see a show and we say, oh, that show was great, or I really enjoyed that piece. And we don't even think about what it was. I didn't even know it was in the running. Like, it's submitted and it won to be a Pulitzer Prize winner who, lives right down the street from me is, that's a norm for you in New York.
I don't know about
you probably trip over Pulitzer Prize winners.
I don't know about
I'm sorry,
tripping
Mr.
over them. Mr. Pulitzer Prize winner. No, but what was exciting?
Was that your Pulitzer Prize that fell out of your bag?
If we're going to drop names, last night I went to see an off-Broadway musical that hasn't opened yet. And people working on it, which I didn't know they were working on it, and these are people I've worked with and know, where there's a multi-Tony Award winning lighting designer, a Tony Award winning director, it's great to be hanging out and bump into friends, right? And these people have won awards and they still, excuse the expression, have to work. Part of it is their guts.
Yeah.
They just need to do the next creative thing. And the other part is just because you won the Pulitzer Prize doesn't guarantee you a living wage. And so it's a combination of both.
Exactly.
Which matters.
One of my friends was like, $15,000? That's it?
Well, it's $15,000 more than they had.
15. Oh, exactly. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah,
it's just
let's
it's
not
just
start
funny
getting
how.
picky.
Oh no, I'm not. Please, please, if I could win a Pulitzer, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would do. I I would hang it over everything. I'd be like, "Hello, hi. I'm sorry. Did my Pulitzer get in your way? My bad."
Hmm. Well, and you win a Tony and you
They'll
get
be like, "Well,
nothing.
what have you written after this?"
Tony's
Yeah.
doesn't give you
You're only as
anything.
good as your last you're only as good as your last Pulitzer.
Okay, let's move on. Weren't we going to
Anyway, and
stall
so
on the
this
award discussion?
I know there's these pregnant pauses here and everything. So I actually wanted to open this I wanted to open this episode with a question. What are the most important Tony Awards for a production and why,
There are only two,
in your opinion?
in my opinion.
Yeah.
The only ones that make a difference
Yeah.
at the
And
box office, and that is
mhm.
Best Musical and Best Play. We're done.
Yeah.
The rest are personal achievements, and which are wonderful, and certainly a Best Actor. It creates interest. If you have a star, the star is going to bring in people anyway. Hugh Jackman will bring in someone whether he wins a Tony Award or not. But other than that,
Yeah.
at the box office, there are only two awards. These the Tony Awards, unfortunately, and I don't want to downplay them because um, I adore Broadway theater, and everyone working on it works their butts off, and the quality is high. The problem is that the awards are expensive to get. Everyone has to buy their
Mm.
own seat in the audience, um, including the actors, often paid by the producer for the actors if they get nominated. The expense for the show of performing on the Tony Awards can be in the hundreds of thousands. And if your show is just hanging on there financially, that could put you under. And if you have no chance of winning Best Musical
Yeah.
or Best Play, you will close right after the Tony Awards. And it's just that part of it's an
Mhm.
embarrassment. But that's because it's television is paying the bill, not theater. It is CBS,
Yeah.
and they have limitations. So, but it's a wonderful experience, to be a part of, and it means a lot. But the awards are unimportant for the success of the show, unfortunately. Is that enough of an answer? Was I hemming and hawing on that?
Y-
Uh, I've been
Oh
involved in
no.
a number of
No,
those
yes it
award
is
shows.
because
Go ahead.
I think about it like somebody comes from the Midwest. Are they coming here looking for are they looking for the Tony award winning production, or are they looking for the production that, piqued their interest? Like what is the thing that they are looking for? Like when they're at TKTS, they're looking for what's available, kind of,
Also, also
or
the
they have an idea
international
of what's popular.
and international guests
Yeah.
very often are looking for shows that are mostly music and dance because they don't understand English, and that's why many
Mhm.
shows the Phantoms that they already know Phantom of the Opera, so they can come in and they're familiar with the story, so they can follow it. It's the same thing you think about if you were
Yeah.
to go to another country in another language. If you could find something that you already knew the story, you might go there because, aha, I at least won't be bored. I know what's going on. And I hate to say it, from the
Mhm.
Midwest, that could be the truth too. I know the story of
Yeah.
Mrs. Doubtfire. I saw the movie, right? So I'll go see that, even
Mhm.
if and luckily it's enjoyable. But I'll go see that over something I don't understand or no one's talked to me about, right?
Yeah.
And I'll read the
It's
reviews
just,
sometimes.
besides being right there in Times Square with all the billboards, you know, sparkly, uh, you know, trying to get your attention.
Hmm.
There's not enough time there to talk about how much work went into this, like the passion, like the the inside stories that might make you feel a little bit more drawn to a production. And if you're not as savvy as the insiders in our business, you may not peruse Theater Mania or Playbill or Show Score
Right.
or, Broadway.com or Broadway World for that matter. You may not go through all of those. You may just know that you're going to hit Times Square and say, well, we can't leave without seeing something,
Right. Well, and what has
you
happened
know?
since the opening of the TKTS booth, the half price booth, most shows hire people to walk the line explaining to people what the show is about and why they should see the show that they've been hired to promote on the TKTS line, because most people on that line don't know which show is better than the other. Or if they say, well, I only want to see a musical, I was going to Long Day's Journey into Night. Well, no, that's not a musical. There's actually people online to help the tourist and drive them perhaps in the
Yeah.
wrong direction sometimes. But I guess that's a good thing. But it's just another expense, another person outside trying to help both the audience know what they're getting into and the show survive, right? Do you have something
And
like that
then
in
the
Philly,
poor
Mr. Darnell? Is there anything in Philly like that?
no, because we don't really have a central place. Like it would be City Hall, like Dilworth Park, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't do that there. And maybe it's a great idea, Lanish, executive director of Theater Philadelphia. Maybe this will be a great idea to think about some sort of presence at Dilworth Park, talking to passersby about the great work in the Philadelphia theater scene, but there isn't a central place that everybody's going to go. And even Dilworth Park in itself is not uh, it's not as easy to get to as you might think. It's literally sitting right in the center, between Market Street and Broad Street, and if you're not planning to go over there, it would not be considered a destination if you were thinking about where to go for theater. And even though Broadway, well, not Broadway, but like the Avenue of the Arts is Broad Street, and you can get to quite a few theaters if you go south, for probably the next mile. Um, you know, it's still like you still have to have an idea. You have to do that work on your
Right.
own,
Well,
while
and
the
and that
Theater
would be my
Philadelphia
thing.
website is probably the best resource.
I'm a tourist. I walk into Philly and I say, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to see some theater tonight. I would not know where to start. I mean, yes, of course I would. I mean, I
Mhm,
would know how to look it up. But if the idea of having a central place of information saying, hey, by the way, the show you want to see doesn't play
mhm,
tonight, before I get to that theater and find out,
mhm.
right? Or that there is a place that has
Yeah.
discounts, or it's, what's this show about? How do I find out? Having
Well,
That's
let
called
me let me
marketing.
adjust let me adjust that statement.
Okay.
Let me adjust that statement. And it really does depend. Let's say you get on the mega bus or Chinatown bus and you're coming from New York and you're coming to Philly. You could in theory get off around 6th Street and go to the visitor center, the
Mm-hmm.
Independence Visitor Center, and there you could find a lot of information about the various theatrical productions that are going on in the city. But from there, is there a direct route to any of those theaters? Not exactly.
And
Yeah,
also,
so that's what makes it tough. And
there isn't necessarily someone at the visitor center. Maybe there is, but I would assume not. The ones that I've checked don't have it. Someone who I can say, tell me about these shows. Have you seen them all? Which one,
mhm,
if for my family or
mhm,
my taste, should I try to go see tonight? Just to chat it up, to make it exciting, because Philly has an amazing
yeah,
theater community. And the one thing I will say
mhm.
about New York is we do have Times Square, and even though a lot of theaters are not in Times Square, that is the center of everything. And you can go there and
Yeah.
you can find lots of information about the shows and lots of people talking it up and lots of places to buy a ticket as well as online. Anyway, it's an idea for
It's crazy
everybody.
how relevant it's it's crazy how relevant rent always is. New York City, center of the universe. Times are shitty.
Yeah.
20 even in 2022. But I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure they can't get worse. Hmm.
Well,
So we say.
Trevor Noah has the best intro. His Daily Show at night. He cut, live. It's not
Yeah.
live. He says, but coming directly from New York City, the only city in America. That's his opening spiel on his show. I laugh every time I hear that. It's absurd,
Yeah.
and it's the same point he's making his point. That's what we think of ourselves.
Philadelphia needs its own talk show so we could say coming to you live from Philadelphia,
That's right.
America's first city.
Well, that's what this podcast
Cuz
is, Darnell.
we are America's first.
This podcast direct from
Yes.
Philadelphia.
Yes.
So there you go. We got it.
By way, yes. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't is it New York by way of Philadelphia or Philadelphia by way of New York?
I don't care. I don't care.
We're connected.
We're connected, and we should be. And for those listening who aren't old enough,
According to our metadata, we are located in New York.
Philadelphia used to be the most important pre-Broadway stop for trying shows out.
Yeah.
Even in my
Mm.
midlife, I won't even say youth, I took shows to Walnut Street. I was working on shows that we spent 2 weeks there with a pre Broadway show and then moved right to New York and opened. That was part of the
Mhm.
tour that you were expected to take. And that has been lost,
Yeah.
which is a shame because it
Yeah.
was a good place with good audiences. A lot of things, of course, pandemic notwithstanding, but I think this happened even before the pandemic that these things change. But we'll see where it goes.
Yes.
Um, anyway, let's changing subject to which has to do with Tonys and has to do with Pulitzer and everything else. There's an element of the theater that has been on my mind this week: stress. Um, Having worked in regional theater,
What's
yeah,
that about?
what's that about? I had lunch with a director who said that she had finally decided that she was no longer willing to do three things at the same time, only two, and therefore she was saying no for the first time in her life to a suggested project, even though she was
Wow.
interested. And that got me thinking about um, these stagehands I've worked with who literally stay up overnight solving a problem and don't get to see their families
Mhm.
and don't have time for dinner, even though it's the rules say they should. And the people, the actors who, of course, after they have an 8 hour day of rehearsal, they go home and they have to memorize lines and work on it. They're not only having an 8 hour day, right? And then, God forbid, you are starting your own theater company. Let's talk about
Yes.
that. Um, First of all,
Yeah.
again, the one thing they don't teach you in any college is you need a business course. You need to understand that when your accountant and your bookkeeper comes to you, that there will be mistakes and you need to be able to find them and you need to be able to explain to them how you want to work. And every time you do a new show, it's like start doing a startup company as if you're opening a Hallmark card store for the first time. The stress level of every project is unbelievable.
Mhm.
Uh, Speak to that, Darnell.
Yeah.
You just yeah.
Well, okay, so I yeah, I can speak to this. So, um let's see. In high school as I was, involved in the drama club, I went through this whole process of theater production. And then when I got out of high school and went off to college and I wrote a play and then I didn't know what to do with that play. after I wrote it, and I said, maybe I could shop it around. And then a few years later, it became clear, thanks to the artist's way, that I needed to start my own company because
Mm-hmm.
it was bigger than just that one play. I was like, I want to tell stories. I want to bring these stories to life on stage. And I thought about it and I said, the difference between running a theater company and working in like a performing arts club or a drama club is that I'm fully aware of how much things cost now.
That's
you
right.
know, in high school there was a budget. It was like because the drama club is a club, so the club has a budget, and then it has the resources of the entire school. Like you don't pay to rent the auditorium. You
Don't
just
pay the
kind of book
actors.
time in
You
the
don't pay the
auditorium.
actors. You don't pay the
Yeah,
musicians. You don't pay anybody.
no. I mean, I had a as a stage manager, I had 17 crew members. Like I have never had 17 crew members as an artistic
Hmm.
director. And it's like, I don't know how that would have ever been possible without us all wanting to be there. And so the things that I did learn is that we're all here because we want to be here, and we have to be aware of that. So we have to be a little bit sensitive about everyone's involvement. So, the conversations that I had with our team was very much about like, I know everybody wants to play and kind of connect to their friends and everything, but we have to be real about the fact that we have work to do. And then once I started my own company, it was like I had to pay these people to stick around.
Hmm.
As
and
much as they had
and it's
passion
not
about
enough for them to pay their
being
rent
in.
either. And that's the thing is that
Yeah.
on one great big level, if we really pay people what they're worth or enough to survive, you really need a Broadway salary. And look what they have to do. They have to charge $300 a ticket. They have to raise millions of dollars just to get open. You can't expect that everywhere. That's just a few places, right? So the what do we learn from that? That the business model, I don't know that it can change, but the business model is very problematic, right? Regional theater that, well, I'm
Yes.
going to go back a step. The first big show that I directed in New York City, we just did a showcase. It was 4 weeks. We weren't planning to do any more. It was it, it wasn't expected to run, and we just did it. It was so good. We were turning away hundreds of people a night, and people came up to me offering money to move it to an open run off Broadway theater. The problem is, I
Hmm.
didn't know enough to know how much that would cost. I didn't know how to do that. I was the director. I
Yeah.
wasn't the administrator, the manager. I didn't know what these things were. So great, we had this money being offered to us, and we never got to do it because if you can't turn it around quickly with people who know what they're doing,
Hmm.
it goes away. And this is I
Yeah.
at this point I admonish people, of course, but with hopefully with a little sense of humor and empathy, um, that they need to learn. They, again, another reason why the
Yeah.
book was written. You're going to do Broadway. Don't come to me and say you have $1 million and you're doing a $20 million musical. You ought to know better before you try to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And also, when you think about it as individuals, we are continuously managing money every day. We have jobs, we get paychecks, but there are so many people who do not know exactly how much money they get in their paycheck. you
Yeah.
know so their money gets directly deposited, and then they schedule a bunch of payments to go out automatically, so then they just hope, some people just hope all of those clear and that there's money afterwards. But you can't run a business like that. You
No,
have to be very methodical about, okay, when's the money coming in, when does the money absolutely need to go out? The very last
right.
minute that this money needs to go out.
And,
Because it's all about Flow, managing flow.
and understanding the surprises. And the surprises are taxes,
Yeah.
and the surprises are, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, we just had a hit. We have to market it. And now we need extra money. We have none. I
Yeah.
didn't plan for that. Or we have a
Yeah.
hit
Mm-hmm.
and we have to take a few losses for a couple of weeks before the word of mouth gets out and all the ticket sales start going. But we don't have enough money to keep the show running while it's not making a lot of money. And therefore, we have to close in advance. All of these are things that have to do with some of it's experience, some of it's being around people who are experienced, putting the right team together, because not everyone can know everything,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. It is about the
Yeah.
team, and you need people who are organized in the right places. You don't want people who say, "Oh, you mean you had a meeting at 10 and I'm here at 10:15? That's okay." It's like, no, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't help me, right? And if you don't know
Yeah.
something, I want you to ask, "Hey, I don't know it. Tell me, teach me." Anyway, but the
You
stress, this is
you
all
sent an
stress. It's all stress. I'm sorry.
yes.
You were saying Darnell.
I was going to say you sent an email. You sent an email earlier this week pointing out, the value of why play development is so essential,
Mm-hmm.
and I wondered if you could expound on that and talk about how that importance of time and making space for that matters because that's money too,
It's big money. Yeah.
right
Um,
there.
I
Yeah.
I'm going to keeping this short. First of all, God bless our writers, and I don't mean everyone who just says I'm bored right now. I'm going to start writing something. But there are people who do have
Hmm.
stories to tell and who are trying to get there. And not everyone's a genius. You don't have to be a genius to come up with something worthwhile. Um, the problem is most of the theater companies I've noticed will say, okay, we think your play is really good. We'll give you a commission and we're going to give you a reading of it. And pretty much they say, here's some professionals, sit around, work up the reading, present it to us. And you know what? It was good, but it still isn't as good as we were hoping. Goodbye. Or they'll say, hey, that was really good. We're going to put it in our season. But then they put it in the season as is. And the critics come in and say, well, that's good, but it's not great. And that's the end of that show.
Mm.
Shows need development. They need
Yeah.
time for the writers to say, I didn't realize how boring that monologue is that I wrote, but the rest of the play was pretty good. So they get to go back and cut back on the monologue. Or they say, all the characters are great, but that one character, nobody liked him. I wrote him, I thought he was interesting, but he's not. I need to go back and either write him out or rewrite him. You don't really get this until you see it, you hear it, you reread it again. You have people who are experienced giving you some feedback, and then after you rewrite it, you have to do the process again and again. And this takes time
Yeah.
and energy. Where are the people doing this? And this is what, when people ask all the time, how did that show get to Broadway? It was awful. Who would have said that's good? Well, that's because they read it first. They said, let's hire all these wonderful people, and they didn't develop it. They didn't sit down and say, hey, not everything's perfect. It starts with the script. And my thing is, that's where most of the
Mm.
bombs on Broadway are, because the productions are wonderful. The best sets, the best lights, the best costumes, the best actors. So why was the play a bomb? Well, maybe it starts with the script, right? And that's the long
Mm.
version. Um, I just think this is what we need to do in the new normal, and I wish nonprofits could invest in that, in giving a good writer some space and some feedback to let them develop it. Is that
So what do you
yeah?
think happens there? What do you think happens there? Because an artist, like sometimes people just have a raw talent
Mm-hmm.
and they don't know exactly where to go with it, and that's why they need so many people around them because there's a manager who knows how to negotiate. You have an agent, you
Right.
have a publicist, all these things. But somebody who just writes, who's like, I've been kicking around these ideas for years, and I finally decided to sit down and put them all together, and got some positive feedback and went off. But no part of them is saying, or even like uh, attesting to having a process in place other than I wrote a piece.
Right.
You know, so the business part of it is where most of our artists, d- you know, are not experts
No.
in the business of it.
No.
You may just say like I know how to hone my voice, or I know how to craft my look. Um, I make certain choices, but in how do you get yourself, like some people can't get across town, in rush hour traffic, so but that's not to say that they are a problem, but it's that they just don't realize that there's other things they need to know. Like you can't just be great on the piano. You have to have so many other things to be able to put
and
your skills
but
on the
and
piano in
what
front of
yeah,
an
no,
audience who would enjoy them.
right, and what complicates what you just said, and it really does, is there are theatrical works that don't fit the mold. So it's not about, there's a rule, your characters must do this, and you have to have this many scenes and it has to be this long. You look at shows like Hair, or which went crazy at a time where there was no rock and roll on stage, and it just went crazy. And shows like Rent, which went off in different directions also. But then there are shows with completely different
Hmm.
formats that were all dance. The show for colored girls, which is a, I don't even want to characterize it. It's called the choreo poem, but it's everything and it's moving from beginning to end. And it's a brilliant piece of theater, but it doesn't fit a category other than the fact that it's not a musical. Um, why would you
Yeah.
tell the writer not to do that? Um, Sometimes it just has to be seen. Sometimes it has to be passion. Sometimes you need other people to collaborate. Um, I will offer Joe Papp's piece of wisdom that was told to me firsthand, so nobody can argue with me. And he just said, for the most part, I'd prefer to produce 100 plays without reading them. And I have a better chance of getting an artistic and commercial hit out of that than if I read them all and pick out what I think are the best three, because it's not only about the script, it's about the collaboration. You bring in a director and certain performers
Yeah.
and designers to work with you, and your play changes and it adapts and it grows. And then what comes out of it is a piece of art, hopefully. And in other cases, you can start with a great script and you bring in some people and they destroy it. But
Yeah.
what does the writer do? Is your basic question, and we're all struggling with that. I'm working very hard. The farm, our group, working very hard trying to find a non-traditional path to open some doors for some genius writers. And not all of them are genius, but some of them are. They could write a great play from scratch, but they've developed four, five, six different drafts along the way, and they're still going. But who's there to say, we're interested in putting it on a stage? Most likely, the artistic director is working with their friends or trying to do another version of Hello Dolly because it sells tickets. So we're in this real struggle
Yeah.
right now, finding the right people. And I think the new normal we're hoping comes out of the pandemic will eventually open some of these doors. Any theater company that's willing to do that
Yeah.
has my support in any way I could do it. Most of them are either closed because of money, and you know what happened to the pandemic. They have a new artistic director, so we have no idea where they're going with it, uh, or they just don't have the vision. I hate to say, I don't know. I wish I had the answer for you. I said, with the farm, we believe there's going to be a path. But you have an answer,
Yeah.
Darnell? Do you have any
Well,
thoughts?
I've not quite, but I've had conversations over the years where I've said because I was, engaged in the work, in the experience of seeing the piece on its legs in the audience. Um, I would say that oh, I think it would be great if the script was in the lobby, and then you could take the script home and read the blueprint that brought all of this to life. But the thing is, like, that's a very insider kind of thought
Mm-hmm.
process, because it is in fact a blueprint, and there are so many pieces of this that bring this together that you can't see on the page,
Right?
so. And I, I don't know if it's I used to be such a fan of, like, everyone should have, if the script is available, it should be something that you could buy in the lobby. Take it with you, But now I'm starting to think a little differently about it, especially because of all the other things that bring this together. Because last night, for example, I saw Schoolgirls,
Mm-hmm.
the African American. I'm sorry, Schoolgirls, or the African Mean Girls play.
Right.
I got a couple of things going on in my head here, and I was thinking about it and saying, like, this production is engaging. It's moving me. By the way, that was Arden Theater Company. Go see it. Go see it on stage till June 5th. And but their presentation of it is not on that page,
Interesting.
so you still have to go into the theater to see to experience that production. um Now, for me, on the inside, it's just there. It's only because of my own experience. Like, I remembered reading Fun Home on the train back to Philadelphia while I was listening to it in my ears, you know, and I was like, wow, what an interesting experience. And that's what was making me think. And I think the people who love to go into the drama bookshop are kind of like that,
Yeah, well,
where
that's the
uh,
Pulitzer Prize.
they're
It's
catching this on
literary.
such a
There's something literary. There's a value to it as a literary
yes,
piece, but there are plenty of shows, and I'm willing to say it.
yeah,
Pippin is not a Pulitzer Prize winning script, but you put Bob Fosse directing it,
hmm,
and it becomes a really entertaining,
yeah,
popular show. It's the collaboration
hmm,
and the production, right?
yeah,
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
yeah. We do need to put more time in, and
But it
there are
costs
so many
money,
companies.
Darnell.
There are so many companies.
Go ahead. Yeah, no, no.
Go
I
ahead.
just say,
I was gonna say there are so many companies in major cities that are just it almost we're it almost brings the question, like, why are we running to these sites um to get scripts that are already published? Like, why don't we want to be the part of why don't we want to be in the process of bringing something new to the stage? you know um Starting with a manuscript, and then really working with that writer, with a director and this team, developing something into something
perhaps the
amazing.
answer is that the
We should all
artistic
be.
directors and the other people running these theater companies, as you were saying, talking about writers, they're not experts. They really don't have any valid reason to be an artistic director. The ones who do, it's pretty evident. We get some amazing work and original work out of them. So how and there's nothing
Mm,
wrong with a youngster starting their own company. As you, I had my own nonprofit company when I was in my 20s because nobody else was going to hire me to work on new work, right? So that was my excuse. Well, I'll
mm,
start my own company. Well, at a certain point, you go, yeah, okay, I got it. It was hard. It was stressful day and night, and worrying about where the money's coming from, and and we're not making any money coming in, and that means we're going to lose money. And what do we do with that? And how do we keep this for free? And how do we get the word out? On and on and on. Um, at least in New York, if you have a friend who's a press agent, they can contact a reviewer who might come in and say, that was really good. And then you got some free advertisement. What do you do if you're in Indiana? Right? And you could be
Yeah.
a great writer. It has nothing to do with where you live. And we're missing these people, these creative talents. We need to have more places for them to fail. They have to be allowed to fail and develop. And I'm keep looking to nonprofits and saying, what are you there for? Are you just there to say, well, my town doesn't have a theater and I want to do theater, so I'm going to raise money so I can do theater? It's not supposed to be about
Mm,
you. And just like a writer, it's not supposed to be your
yeah.
therapy session. You don't write, I'm going to write a one man show for myself and talk about my angst growing up. That's therapy. Write me a show with a story that you think I'm going to care about and be entertained by. Give me something that I really don't care about one man shows. You know that. Or one woman shows
if
at
you
all.
did if you did just want to if you did just want to pour your heart out to me, buy me a drink.
There you go. There you go. Exactly. And the stories are great. One of the great things about working in our industry is, and I'm sure there are people outside our industry with just as many interesting stories, but wow, have I learned things about the world just by hearing people in the industry tell me their life story. They're amazing. They come from other
Mm,
countries. They come from different parts of the United States. Some were abused. Some had phenomenal lives. Some were in between. Some had a good year. Some had a bad year. Some had to sneak around just to get a sandwich. Some had food thrown at them with caviar. You put them all together, and it's amazing. But the people I know who aren't in the theater aren't as open with this stuff. They're kind of embarrassed. Well, I didn't have a
yeah.
great life. That's Come on, give me a story. Talk to me. But that's not necessarily a
Okay.
play.
Okay. Tell me more.
Tell you that's right.
Well, well, when you hear that, there are a lot of people who do not have the time, patience, or interest in learning more. But
Right.
I'm sure if you said, "Tell me more," they would.
Perhaps.
You know,
Perhaps. I mean, I don't want to make a generality.
I I
There,
don't know. Maybe you don't have to write it. Maybe you don't have to write it into a piece and then put it up on a stage. But maybe if let's just in general, maybe if society appeared to be more interested in realizing that we are a part of something greater and not the center of attention, that maybe there would be an opportunity for more people to be able to tell their stories without having to have a particular platform. Like, you know, uh, for the theater artist who says, my life wasn't that great.
mm-hmm.
Or getting here wasn't a cakewalk, or something. And you say, tell me more. And then now somebody wants to know because like I watch this it's like I watch a ton of video essays. I guess I'm in that generation that sees the value in YouTube. So there's a lot of video essays there. And there was one that was saying, like, when we meet someone and we ask them questions like, how's your day and things like that, we're not looking for them to tell us about the greatest thing
Right.
that's happened to
Right.
them. We're looking to hear about their struggles and the things that we can relate to. I'm not having the best day either. Like, tell me more about how your day is not the best day so that we can relate on the struggle. Like, most of even now on social media, like you'll hear something like the struggle is real, something like that, where people are relating more to there being a struggle instead of, but it's not all social media. There's something like Instagram that's constantly pictures of me living my best life, like, and all the everything that revolved around getting that perfect shot or whatever you think was that perfect
But you know
shot
what? All
was
everything, social
chaos.
media, Instagram, all that stuff you're talking about is still a presentation, and that is. And I'm not arguing against it. I mean,
Mhm.
it has great value in its own right.
Yeah.
But what I get excited about
Mhm.
is the non-presentational reality that someone can format that both entertains and educates me about life in general. You talked about if society would do this, if society would do that. Society's never going to do it. Forget society. This is a one-on-one experience. If I don't know you, I really don't care about you giving me 2 hours of your story of how you came out. I'm just not interested unless you are so unusual that there's 2 hours worth of other
You
stuff.
don't want to know my coming out
No, I
story?
don't. Uh, it's about what are you filling my 2 hours with? Because the coming out story can be a good 10 minutes, and that's interesting. But don't make me sit there
Yeah.
for 2 hours that I have to learn that you were breastfed the wrong way. I'm not interested. But if you have a character that has a lot more to them and they happen to be breastfed the wrong way, that could be interesting. Tell me the story. Why is that relevant to anything? Right? And then we go with it.
Yeah.
Get me involved from the beginning, and there is nothing more valuable than what I see on a stage in theater. I have learned so much, not just on stage, but off stage from people in our industry. Um, and some of it's a horrible thing, and so, just like the world, and some of it's magnificent and life affirming, right? Um, but going back to your thing about writers, um, we all have the dream, you get it. It's the same thing, even with a Broadway show. Oh my God, we've raised $15 million. My show is finally going to get on Broadway. I have this picture of, imagine I get to opening night and everyone's raving and it's a chorus line or it's Hamilton. And this is the biggest thing. And oh my God, I feel great. That's a dream. It's about the work.
Mm.
And the chances of you getting $15 million is next to none. It's 1 in 100,000 million, right? It does happen. But what story are you telling so that your story is important? More importantly, is if you have a business you want to open, how are you planning to get it open? Are you borrowing money? Are you mortgaging your house? Do you have rich relatives? Are you putting a team together of friends, some of which who have money that you're all agreeing that we're going to work on this together? There's got to be more than just sitting in your room by yourself writing your thoughts. Now, you can start that way. Of
Mhm.
course, I think that's everything starts that way. But at some point, we have to
Yeah.
start teaching ourselves. I mean, I wish I had known this when I was younger, that there's a team that needs to be put together. You may not know them yet, so you start with one person or two, or you find a teacher in your high school who might be able to help you. And it may not be the right person. Don't sign contracts. But next thing you got a musical. Record the songs. Does somebody think it's good? If not, throw it out and start again. You can't get defensive. You have to say this is going to be a long process, but you always have to know what your next step is, even if it never gets to Broadway. And that's stressful.
So
Bring it back to that. I
yes.
am so
Let
overstressed.
me ask this.
Yeah.
So let me ask this. How do you how do you encourage that path in this climate?
There will be a future. This climate, this too shall pass. It's just as, and I don't mean to be that cliche, but before the pandemic,
Hmm.
no one could have predicted the pandemic. So We're now
Yeah.
coming through the pandemic. We're not there yet. And a lot of the attempts at going back to the old normal are proving to be really unfortunate, if nothing else. We need to reinvent the wheel a little bit. And we have to find people who have that vision. And then we have to latch on to them. And that doesn't mean they already have a theater company. And that doesn't, it doesn't mean because you submitted your play to some phenomenal theater in Louisville or Chicago or Minneapolis and they rejected it. It may have nothing to do with the quality of your writing. First of all, it may need more development and they're not ready to develop. But if there are people who you like working with, that's a good place to start. Work together, get it to the next step. Find friends who want to be actors, even if they're bad actors. Do something. It's the hardest thing. I hate to go Nike on everyone, but do it. And you can't worry
Yeah.
about the money. That's the problem. Everyone has to work with you for free, and if they won't, move on and find someone who will. And yes, everybody wants to work with the stars. Everyone wants a great actor. That's what you're
Yeah.
building toward. I had a big argument with a writer, and I didn't mean to argue with him, but he was in his late 70s, and I'm sure he was thinking, hey, I finally retired. I wrote a play. Someone should just love it. Tell me how I get it to New York. It doesn't work that way. I'm sorry, unless you have a lot of money, and then you still shouldn't spend it. And by the way, without naming them, there are already at least 2 off-Broadway shows in New York that shouldn't be here, that are only there because someone brought a lot of money from out of town. And they will open, close, lose all their
Mm.
money, and I'm embarrassed for them. They're that bad. It's a shame, you know?
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Instead of bringing all your money to Broadway with a show that may not be ready, and this is kind of going
You
back to what we
froze,
started
Dario.
talking about, what would be the better starting point?
So I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat yourself. You froze on my end.
What would be the better starting point? You find somebody who wrote a thing, and it's interesting enough for you to say, "I want to throw some money behind it."
Mm-hmm.
But instead of immediately running to Broadway because you have
Right.
those connections, what would you do?
The,
Let's just
um,
say you're sitting
the
on
first step,
let's just say you're
and I'll be
sitting on
very
$1 million
precise.
that you could
If, let's say,
really put
right,
into a piece of work.
let's say
What would you
let's say
do?
someone is willing to give you, and I'm being really conservative here, but someone's willing to give you $10,000,
Hmm.
then the lowest,
Yeah, a million's kind of
yeah,
high. ten
yeah,
thousand
ten
dollars.
thousand. Let's start real, but that's my point. You can do
Yes.
10.
Hmm.
Um, you can do more than that. You do 20 readings, equity readings with equity actors and a director, 20 of them for $100,000. If someone
Hmm.
gives you 10, you got 2 times. You need someone who knows how to budget that, how to package it. I mean, you can learn it yourself. This is not, brain surgery. But basically, you're
Hmm.
going to spend as little money as you can. Of course, if you don't know professional actors and you don't know the director, that's why you needed that business course, right? But for
Mm.
the most part, find someone else in the theater who does have some context. Say, I'll pay you some money, like I'm paying the director. I need you to help me put together a team. And all we're doing is a reading, and we're not even inviting an audience. And we're going to do it. We're going to sit there and we're going to discuss it with the actors and maybe a few of my relatives and my friends. And then I'm going to take it back and rewrite it. And we're going to do it again in a few months. And then we're going
Yeah.
to do it again. And you do it until someone says, "What are you talking about? I'm ready to take you, here's $100,000. What do we do next?" And then you have those actors or team members that you connected with, so you keep them with you, and the others you just move on from. And then you need
Mhm.
someone who understands equity contracts and other things so that you're not messing with anybody. Of course, you don't have to start equity at all. You can start with just friends, college friends. But it doesn't necessarily help you to have a college student playing an 80-year old in your play. Sometimes you really want so you can see it, right? And you don't even need a
Yeah.
director the first time. The director comes in after you say, you know what, I don't really know what to do with this now. Maybe I need an outside vision. And you find someone who can direct and you bring them in. And that doesn't cost a lot of money at the beginning because you're not spending a lot of time or money and you're not building sets and you're not putting costumes on them. You are listening to the actors and the words and imagining everything and talking it over. That's the process. And these shows that go, even if they don't go straight to Broadway, they go to a big stage and they build the set immediately. Set design, I'm second to none about my admiration of these set designers. It is the last thing you need, but you do need it eventually, of course.
Hmm.
But even the Titanic, the
Yeah.
musical, did not need to sink the Titanic the first 20 times they're going through the script. And they should have gone through the script without it first, in my opinion. Anyway, that's my answer to you. I'm one person, but I believe it
Well, I
strongly.
feel like yeah, and for some reason there's such urgency to get whatever in front of an audience
Mm-hmm.
instead of really going through that process. I really would. I mean, I'm very happy with the path that I took that got me here. But if I were to do it again, that would have been my thought process. Let's create something and let's keep working on it.
Mm-hmm.
Until we get to a point that we really love it, we think we've done as much as we can do with it, and then let's start something else, and
Well,
figure out what the next step
right.
is for that piece.
And you bring in the
But it's
audience at that point. Think of it, if you're the audience and someone brings you in early, but doesn't tell you, hey, I'm asking for your opinion. They're actually saying, you're going to see a show. And it's not
Mhm.
good enough, shall we say, to really make someone excited about it. Do you really think this audience is going to want to come back? And people say, oh, I want to bring in a reviewer to when the festivals do these shows. Oh, reviewers are going to come. You don't want a reviewer there. They only come once. They will
Hmm.
never come back to see your work if you bored them to death, or if your show flopped, or if it didn't quite work, or if any part of it wasn't great. They just don't have that energy.
Yeah.
So wait, ask for some help. That's great. That's what friends are for, and professionals if they're working with you. But wait until you say, you know what, at this point, I wonder what a general audience would think. And we're ready for it. And then you try it small. This is, and I wish most of the Broadway shows I've seen this season already had done that.
You just gotta wait for it, wait for it, wait for
See, we get entertainment on this podcast too.
it.
Sang, Darnell, sang.
My brain, I'm not actively finding a piece of a musical piece to drop in here, but it's just a conversation. I mean, we are talking theater, so
Yeah, I know. I get,
it goes
and I
in.
get a little too
But
passionate
yes,
about this.
yes, though. I mean, but this is valuable stuff. I hope the listeners are finding value in this conversation. Like, we do need to slow down. Like, the urgency is what allows you to keep going forward.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have to say, like, if we don't put this up by Friday, then we're never going to do it. It's like we just have to, you have to have uh I got to find this quote. Like, I know I share quotes with my partner all the time, but it's something about, like, You have to have that urgency, but understand that it's still going to take time. You know,
Yeah.
the urgency to do it. Like, I want to do this. The best time to start this was yesterday. The second best time to start is today, you know? But it doesn't mean I should have had it a year ago and now I'm feeling regret. It just means I want to do this and I'm moving forward on it. And that is why I get up every day.
Right.
This is why I sit in front of the, you know, computer, notepad, whatever, to figure out what this story is, what story I'm trying to tell, and actually go along for that journey. And we should want to be in that. I think it's what is tough is that, especially someone who has brick and mortar, they are trying to they need to get butts in
Right. They have
seats.
to
They
pay
need
their
to
rent.
entertain
They have to
people.
pay their rent.
Yeah, they got to pay the rent. And they don't have, and they may not have time to develop a piece. So they need to have, thank you for doing all that work. We're going to bring it, we're going to bring it to our stage because, we got bills to pay.
And
Um,
I
but
guess my political comment, if or my political bent, is I'm in the new normal after the pandemic. We need to encourage nonprofits who don't have to pay taxes, who can take donations, who are begging people for money. That it isn't about their audiences may think so, but it isn't about the finished product of a show we've already done. It is about working for the theater future, the industry moving the art form along, seeing what we can do. Anyway,
look at it later. Sorry. I'm multitasking
yes,
here.
I noticed. Anyway, is it time to wish everyone a wonderful day?
It is. It is time. There was so much going on in this. There was so much going on in our industry this week. It was exciting. There were Tony nominations. There were Pulitzer prizes. There was nudity. There was fat ham. There's never a dull moment. But we will touch on all of that as those things continue to develop. But these are the valuable conversations we want to have here. And today was a great conversation. Because these are the things that we know. I think a lot of people know, but they don't. And then also, I think a lot of people don't know. There's a lot of people who just get right into a role. Maybe you're an actor and you just get a contract to do the job and you don't really think about the process. Like, what's going on in that administrative office? Like, what are they trying to make sure happens so that we can produce in front of an audience? You know, those things are just as important. And there's a lot of things that people don't realize that we really need to pay attention to and see. We need to give space for that as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think I would love to see more play development and not just in very specific areas. I want to see it all over the place. Like, we should be so overwhelmed by new plays, by plays in development, works in progress. Like, we should be living for that. Like, maybe we should there should be a festival of works in progress instead
Well,
of
to me,
like,
I've always thought most of the festivals that already exist, that is truly what they are. The problem is
hmm,
that they don't think they're in progress. They think, I'm going to put up my play and
yes,
it's finished, and
yes.
someone's going to say, this is great, let's move it to Broadway. And
I mean,
that
would you really go to Edinburgh with something that you didn't think was
and
ready
that's the shame.
for?
Most the stuff there, if not all of it, isn't ready. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean it's not good.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
qualification,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean it's ready. And it depends what the playwrights think finished is. Are they fine with, oh, okay, I did it in front of 40 people, and they paid, $5, $10, whatever they paid, and I'm done. That would make me very satisfied. Most people would say, no, that's not what I'm looking for.
You skipped over 40 black boxes to make your way to
Yeah.
Edinburgh to squeeze into a black box with a show that's not quite
And you had to
ready.
fly and pay that money. It's like you could have done 4
Yeah.
more developmental readings with that
Mm-hmm.
money that you just spent on that.
Oh, and with a non-equity team.
Yeah, after
You know?
that, right. And
Yeah,
there's so many
you're
equity
right.
actors. Again, just repeat, I forget the exact number of equity actors in New York. And this is it's either like 36,000 or 56,000. It's somewhere in there. Out of that, at any one moment, 97.5% of them are unemployed in the arts.
Hmm.
That means you
Hmm.
have a lot of access to people here, which is why people come to New York. I imagine in your community, wherever you are, there's got to be at least 3 or 4, right?
Yeah.
You've got to find your community. And then you got to say, let's
Get
work
him.
together. Anyway,
Yes.
we're ending this now, Darnell. Thank you for summing it up.
Yes. We will. Yes. This has been The Business of Theater, a working title. I am Darnell
I am
Radford,
Mitch Weiss
and we will see you at the
at the
theater.
theater.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of The Business of Theater, a working title, with Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Share the podcast with a friend, colleague, or give us some social media love. This podcast is an Emory production. Visit us online at em3ry.com/TBOT. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at em3ryotm.